DJ Genesis Detroit. Truth in the algorithm. Welcome to the live stream.
Yo, live stream junkie with the mic turned on, breaking down the matrix while the lights stay on. Politics, religion, yeah, we question every claim, while the media playing narratives and shifting every frame. Ancestors speaking through the wisdom of Ifa, cosmic knowledge shining like a distant star. From Detroit to the world on a digital stage, dropping truth bombs every time I hit the page.
Welcome to the channel where the truth get deployed.
DJ Genesis live from Detroit.
Breaking down the system, every lie gets destroyed.
Tap in, subscribe, you rockin' with the voice.
Welcome to the channel.
Where the truth get deployed.
DJ Genesis live from Detroit.
Breaking down the system, every lie gets destroyed. Tap in, subscribe, you rockin' with the voice.
Debates on fire, got the comments going crazy. Asking questions that the system can't face me. From ancient civilizations to the modern day lies, connecting dots that they hide from the public eye.
Knowledge of self, yeah, the ancestors guide. When the full moon rising for the spiritual tide.
This the place where the truth gets exposed.
Every live stream, another chapter unfolds.
To the channel. Welcome to the channel where the
truth get deployed.
DJ Genesis live from Detroit.
Breaking down the system, every lie gets destroyed. Tap in, subscribe, you rockin' with the voice.
DJ Genesis Detroit. Truth seekers unite, 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 unite. Stay away, stay away, stay away. Stay questioning.
Welcome. This is DJ Genesis and I'm live. So today we have a special show that Prince Charlene aka the Mighty Hebrew brought to my attention. The passing of Afrika Bambaataa has happened, and he wanted to give a presentation discussing the contributions of Afrika Bambaataa along with other things. And so I said, okay, you know what, I'll let you go ahead and do it. So without further ado, Mighty Hebrew, welcome to the stage.
Hallelujah, hallelujah. What's going on, DJ Genesis? How you feeling?
Hey, how's it going? What's up? What's going on?
Man. It's raining over here in Tanzania like cats and dogs. It won't stop.
Yeah, it was raining here yesterday. That's why we didn't get to do the show. For those that did come yesterday, we didn't get to do it because it was thunder, and I get very tired when it rains. So
absolutely.
It drags on me. I don't know why. But go ahead.
First and foremost, I want to give all praise and honor to Yahuwah, the supreme, powerful one of our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Those striving for righteousness, I say unto the family, Shalom Aleichem. Yeah, I know this might be a controversial discussion, dealing with the passing away of the late Afrika Bambaataa. I want to say rest in completeness within the Azuletic world of existence and pure will. I pray that, his family is maintained as they experience their loss of their relative, their loved one. And I know most people that talk about or have a discussion as it pertains to Afrika Bambaataa, we know, that first discussion is, the allegations that was placed upon the man. And I want everybody to know that I'm definitely not ignoring the allegations. Condolences to those, victims that came across such a deviant mind state to manifest such an evil act as, we have heard. So I want to give my condolences also, to those that suffered at the hands of who we're speaking about today. But my focus is not going to be on that, because of the fact at the end of the day, after everything is said and done, we have in our face something called hip hop. So I just want to give a brief synopsis with a chronological PowerPoint breakdown, the involvement that Afrika Bambaataa played, because I know most times we hear that he's one of the founding fathers of hip hop, one of the 3 founding fathers. And over here, we don't subscribe to that. You know, we subscribe over here at the Mighty Hebrew University that the founding father that we see in record as it pertains to the origin of hip hop would be the late DJ Disco King Mario. Shout out to his daughter, Sister Mina. I had a nice conversation with her Saturday evening. Dope conversation as it pertains to, you know, how I was going to approach the situation. I even, excuse me, like DJ Genesis said, when it rained a lot, you know, I even get sleepy too. But you know, me and DJ Genesis, we had a long discussion how we was going to approach this situation because, again, victims were involved, and I know the sensitivity of people. But I just want the people to know that I'm doing this definitely for educational purposes, so the next generations won't forget hip hop, because we got to look at this real carefully. You know that the powers that be, anything that can bring us or help us to come together, we know. So we don't want to repeat the cycle from those that were before us, and they, you know, dealt with matters, but not to the point where it stopped matters taking place. So we want to deal with this today. So what do we have here? We have in front of us 3 men. You could post that up, DJ Genesis. The very first picture right there. Yep, let's start there. So we have here 3 men. On the far left, we have DJ Grandmaster Flash. Shout out to Grandmaster Flash. In the middle, we have the late Afrika Bambaataa. And on the far right, we have DJ Kool Herc. And Kool Herc is of Jamaican descent. Bambaataa is from Jamaican Barbadian descent. And Flash is of Barbadian descent. And the narrative is that, you know, hip hop came by the way of these 3 men. This is what we hear. Well, we don't agree with that, because we know you had DJ Grandmaster Flash. Before he was a DJ, he was a B-boy. So the question should be, a B-boy to who? You can't just be a B-boy and that's that. Something had to come from somewhere. So let's get it popping, shall we? So these 3 men are identified as the founding fathers of hip hop. This picture comes from something known as the Source magazine. The Source magazine was one of the most powerful hip hop magazines on the planet. So when they took this picture became the foundation of a false narrative that was played within the minds of the people, that these 3 were the founding fathers of hip hop, and that's just not true. So we're going to dive into a brief synopsis of the blooming of hip hop, because a lot of people have discussions about hip hop, but they really don't know how hip hop evolved into what it's into today. They lack the understanding and the dimension of the sign of the time. And when hip hop was brewing during the 1960s, the late 1960s, we have the civil rights movement taking place. We have the Black Power movement taking place, and I'm black and I'm proud. Can't stop the bum rush. Y'all remember that? You know what I mean? Where James Brown was the father of that, and then we see Public Enemy in the 80s sampling these things to keep that consciousness alive, that the grandfather of what we call modern day hip hop, not the father, I'm talking about the grandfather of hip hop, would be James Brown, the father of soul. The funk is what spawned this. So you got funk music, you got the civil rights movement, you got the Black Power movement, you got all this stirring up the racism and the tension that's going on in the boogie down. You know, you got the Italians on one side, you got the Spanish people on another side, you got the Moreno or the blacks on another side. You know, you got these different ethnic groups sharing their common ideas and connections with one to another. And naturally, the survival tactic would be self-preservation is the best preservation. So you're seeing this development take place. Oh, right here we have my late uncle, the late Rufus Hawley, who was the creator of jazz bagpipe playing. Give a shout out to my late uncle Rufus Hawley, who worked closely with some of the very top-notch jazz musicians. This right here was one of his albums known as The Creation of the Gods. You see him with the Shield of David, even when you go to the picture with him on there on stage and you see him with his turban on and the Shield of David. So he was one of the first in my family back in 1956 to recognize himself as a Hebrew Israelite sovereign national, right? So he knew exactly who he was. So I pray that my late uncle rest in completeness, continue to rest in completeness. So now, who do we have here? We have a man by the name of Fat Jizzle. You know what I mean? Shout out to Fat Joe. You know what I mean? Let it go, Joe. Let it flow, Joe. You gotta let it know, Joe. Right? Y'all remember that, right? So, you know, little pretty dope MC, you know what I'm saying? But he was one that lied and said that hip hop was 50-50. And we know that hip hop isn't 50-50. It was created by Black Americans, period. Right? So, you can go to the next slide. So we got Math Hoffa. He's also of Caribbean descent. And, you know, he has some things to say about hip hop. So now go to the next slide. And I'm gonna need you to read that for me, DJ Genesis, because I can't see it. Can you read that for me?
Sorry about that. Bayesian is a term used to refer to people from Barbados, the Caribbean island nation. Bayesians are citizens or descendants of Barbados and may have a residential, legal, historical, or cultural connection to the island. The term is derived from the word Barbadian and the official demonym for people from Barbados.
Indeed. So, you know,
and then this is Puerto Rican considered white. The majority of Puerto Rican women in the U.S. and Puerto Rico are classified as white on their birth certificate. About 88% of the mainland Puerto Ricans and 94% Puerto Rican islanders are identified as white.
That's right. That's right. But when we start talking about haplogroups and haplotypes, they say that the Puerto Ricans will be considered haplotype R. And they go back to Spaniard descent. We talking about 82% of the Puerto Rican population. That's very heavy. That's very heavy. So, you know, when you talk about Bajans, that would be with Grandmaster Flash and, you know, Math Hoffa and all them would be considered as. So the whole thing is they're trying to take hip hop away from Black Americans and give it to foreigners. So right here we have the godfather of soul, James Brown. You gotta, you know, put on the good foot. Yeah. You know what I mean? So we got to start with the Godfather. We got to give foundation so we can understand exactly what hip hop is. You can't just say, oh, yeah, you know, all people have something. It's so bad, DJ Genesis. You got videos up there talking about Japan. You know, Japanese people are also the founders of hip hop. And see, this
the way
problem,
that they're the founders
you know,
of hip hop, how? Like, because they break dance?
no,
That's where the
because
most of the Asian influences in the dancing now. They've kind of taken over that, and some of the DMC mixing competitions, the turntablism. You know, they were winning a lot of the competitions and stuff like that. But as far as rap, I haven't seen an Asian person like really break into the actual MCing aspect. So,
well, what they're trying to say is when you listen to Afrika Bambaataa playing rock, the soul sonic force. So when you hear that beat, that electro beat, they saying that the equipment that Bambaataa was dealing with and certain samples came from Japanese music. And because of that, automatically they say, oh, see, Japanese people are also founders of hip hop. But that's one of the most foolish things I ever heard or seen.
well, if
but
that's the case, you would say Kraftwerk founded hip hop, because a lot of that type of beat type style was from a German group called Kraftwerk that was doing that in the 70s around the same time.
Right. And I'm glad you pointed that out, because if that's the case, anybody can just say, with most things that you hear when it comes to music, you're going to have certain adaptations, but that don't mean that they were the founders of hip hop. So I'm glad you brought that up and you took the words out of my mouth. The reality is Bambaataa is the one, see, he's coming back into play, that made it for everybody. Originally, cats like DJ Disco King Mario, DJ Tex Hollywood, all these different guys that were a part of the original Black Space from out of Bronxdale projects, you know what I mean, over there in the southeast section of the Bronx. I want to give a shout out to Sister Mina and DJ Faze. DJ Faze was a direct understudy of the late DJ Disco King Mario. So we know from direct eyewitnesses how hip hop was developed. Hip hop was developed by Black American pre-teens and teens. And then later on, it wound up, you know, people started to adopt and continue to build. It went from the pre-teens to the teens to the older people. And then it started to be a mixture of things. You remember back in the day, DJ Genesis, when you seen rap videos or anything about hip hop, you seen, you know, the image of the black man, the black woman. There you go right there. Give a shout out to the late DJ Disco King Mario. May he rest in completeness within the Ozulated world of existence and pure will. That's the world godfather of hip hop right there. The one that they trying to conceal. He's the one that developed the Chuck Chuck City crew. He's the one that brought out Busy B. He's the one that brought out Jazzy J. He's the one that brought out Kid Capri and many, many others. But he couldn't tell the story because he made transition in 1994. So he wasn't never able to put himself in history. Even when you ask about DJ Disco King Mario, you know what I'm saying? They have to admit, you know, Crazy Legs, all of them, they had to admit that, in fact, this is the Godfather right here. A Black American who came from the Carolinas in the 60s and moved over to the Bronx, New York, and became one of the original founders of the Black Spades. You got something to say?
Yeah, well, being from New Jersey, you know, growing up in New Jersey, being raised in New Jersey, I remember when hip hop first started. You know, you had Fab Five Freddy. You had what's that? Word Up. Word Up. Oh, no, it was a TV show with Dee Dee. That used to come on every Friday on TV called was it something?
Pump It Up. Pump It Up.
I said Word Up. Pump It Up. You had the Pump It Up show, and so there was a lot of like independent like shows that would come on. I would say, I'm not sure if that was like public television, but it was like the off stations. You had channel 1, 2, 3, 4. You know but you'd have to put it on B, and then go and then hit the in the middle channels to get the pump it up channel, right? You'd have to, if you had like one of them rotator type of TVs, to get pump it up, you had to go to the off channels. They wouldn't be on the main channels, because if you have 2 dials, you had the one main dial, and then you had that lower dial where you get all of them like off like TV stations. And on one of them stations, they'd have that show called Pump It Up with Dee Dee. Now, back then, hip hop was a joke, kind of, like, as far as mainstream was concerned. Even though they had like the underground movements and stuff like that in New York, but like the mainstream was using rapping. Oh, you break dancing, you're gonna break your neck, you know. And then you had people trying to rap, and I'm rapping. It's like back when white people were still doing the Charleston kind of dance, the Carlton, you know, they were still dancing kind of weird, you know. Back when you had that one guy doing the exercise tapes, you know, whatever his name was, the guy with the curly hair. You know, you had the dude that was still painting those pictures, Bob, whatever his name is, painting pictures on TV. And those are the things that we would see on TV. But there was a whole movement going on the streets of New York. And this is when Times Square was not a good, it was kind of seedy. But if you go to Times Square, you'd see people putting down their cardboard boxes. You see them with their boom boxes, dancing, break dancing and stuff like that. But the biggest thing is rap music and hip hop music was almost like a joke, kind of like a thing that they didn't even take seriously at first. But now you see everybody wants to take claim of it now. But at one point it was not taken serious. It was taken like, oh, look at these, you know, they're rapping. I'm a rapping, you know what I'm saying? All right, don't you remember that? Like when MTV first started to pick it up right after Pump It Up and Dee Dee?
I definitely remember it crystal clear. You know, I remember when Dee Dee got smacked by Dr. Dre and all that on that show. I remember all that stuff that took place. And I definitely remember the catharsis of hip hop and how it slowly got into the mainstream. And one of the elements that they used to get hip hop on the mainstream was a woman by the name of Blondie. And we seen this going on MTV, and we seen this slow momentum taking place until we seen hip hop in its fullness. And you're correct. Most people looked at it as a joke. They didn't recognize that hip hop was going anywhere. Even when you talk about DJ Disco King Mario and the actual founders of hip hop, such as DJ Faze, you know, Green Eyed Stan, you know, Young Blackjack, all these guys that were members of the Black Spades, they didn't even have an idea that they was developing something that was going to be this international and powerful. Basically, they see it now in their older ages as the result of the years of this growth and development. But again, we got right here on the screen the late DJ Disco King Mario, the actual founding father of hip hop. So we're going to make this clear. Hip hop was created by Black Americans. It came from out of gang culture. It came from out of gang culture. That's we're going to show that them 5 elements of hip hop that are being used actually existed prior to it becoming codified in the southeast section of the Bronx and Bronxdale projects. Kool Herc did. That wasn't the first time hip hop came when you start talking about where he was from the west section of the Bronx. Okay, no.
I wanted to say too, the key word in his name is Disco King, right? Now you want to talk about people using Japanese words, but a lot of hip hop back in the day was cut up disco beats, you know, and so they would use cut up disco breaks, you know. So, you know, they were talking about what Afrika Bambaataa was doing, but with Disco King. And if you actually look at some of the wear that, you know, people like Curtis Blow and even Ice-T, you know, they would dress up looking like disco performers, you know, like Earth, Wind and Fire. Right. If you look at some of the attire they were wearing, you know. So disco rap is closer to disco than it would be any Japanese or Kraftwerk type of music.
Right. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, and I want to clarify to people because a lot of people lie and say that the late DJ Disco King Mario was a disco DJ. No, the reason why he had the word disco in his name from the sources directly from his family and people that knew him personally, the reason why originally he was just known as Mario. And there was a dude in the Bronx, his name was Disco King. So when Mario ran into Disco King, basically, you know, he basically took that. It was like, you ain't the real Disco King, I am. And when they was using the word disco, it meant discotheque, meaning the club scene itself. So it wasn't saying disco music. And a lot of people, you know, that don't know the origin of hip hop try to say disco came out before hip hop, but that's not true. From the records, we have hip hop coming out in 1971. When you talk about disco music, you know, the original sound, this might shock people, but the original sound of disco come from out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, with those known as Philadelphia International. They are the ones that came out with that foundational disco beat that in turn became spreaded all over the country. But the record that we can say that disco came out, we seen was in 1975. The dying of disco roughly around the end of 1978, 79. But by then we see hip hop at its peak. It's starting to like, it doesn't surpass now just the Bronx. Now it's all over New York. But again,
hold on. I thought disco was in the 60s and the early 70s. I thought disco started in the early 60s. I mean the mid 60s, early 70s.
No.
In Philadelphia.
Disco music. Disco music. The foundational beat, the founder of the actual disco beat. And you can go on something known as the culture. They just did something like 2 weeks ago on this. The actual founder of the disco beat, yes, he was an R&B artist, an R&B soul artist from the late 1960s that started that sound itself, but it wasn't disco. It was soul music. But later on, as those that started to deal with this sound that became known as disco, they took that foundation and they born disco music out of it. And also later on, after disco, you had those from the alphabet community amongst Black Americans from out of Chicago that were born what later became known as house music.
But you know what? You know what? They say that disco has some French origin as well, and that's where it comes from when they say the 60s with that European French discotheque influence. Yeah. So that's what they're saying.
Yeah, but I know what they're saying, but the discotheque existed before disco music. Discotheque, discotheque is just a nightclub. Just like when you hear what's his name, Big Daddy Kane, you remember his song, Set It Off, he'd be like, rock the discotheque. Discotheque was the name of club. Like back in the day, people would be like, yo, man, I'm about to go to the discotheque. That's just another name for a nightclub. That's it. And then later, like in Philly, we call them clubs. New York, they will call them discotheques. Even Chicago, as far as Chicago, you're hearing them saying discotheque. But people are confusing discotheque with disco music. Disco music and discotheque is two different things. So I just wanna make that clear when you hear the name disco and the late disco DJ King Mario's name. It had nothing to do with disco music. He was rocking the discotheque, meaning but outside, because back in them days, in the late 60s and early 70s, a lot of the youth, most of the youth that were in the black space, they couldn't go to the discotheque. This is why the parties, which was known at that time as the jams, they were outside in the parks because they couldn't go. And remember, they were breakdancing back in the day, but it wasn't called breakdancing. It was called burning. Originally, it was called burning. So they would have their big military boots on, and they dressed a certain way, and they had, you know, the gang cultural clothes. So they couldn't go in the clubs. You know what I mean? So they were the ones that brought it out there to the street. DJ Disco King Mario, he was the first one to bring these jams, so to say, out in the open to the surface. So this is where the first concept of these jams are coming, which is now developing to hip hop. You're starting to see people like, you know, Little Booby, known as the Drummer Boy / DJ Phase today, as you know. They was dealing with microphone, emulating a man by the name of Pygmy Marham. You see it, you know, with the song Here Comes the Judge and I Got That Number and stuff like that, and the Jubilaires with the Noah song, and they rapping. And back in the day, that was called the Dozens, where you would be like, your mama's so fat and all that type of stuff. And this is what they was originally doing on the microphone. They was just spazzing out on people. And that is the first concept of this MC being born from these youth, these little children known as the Little Rascals in the southeast section of the Bronx, which they were born later because they became absorbed into the Black Spades, and they became known as Baby Spades. And then from the Baby Spades, you had the Young Spades. And then the Young Spades, naturally, you got your older Spades. You know, I want to give a shout out to brother, not Monk, but he was one of the original Black Spades as well. But Guru, I want to give a shout out to Guru, one of the, you know, actually the actual founder of the Black Spades, because I heard people trying to say, yeah, the Black Spades were 50-50. It was Puerto Ricans and Blacks. No, you have very few Puerto Ricans in the Black Spades, but the original Black Spades, they were all Black Americans. Remember, the Black Spades came about based on them having beef with the Puerto Ricans. That's how, because a lot of the Black children that were in the southeast section of the Bronx, they were being bullied. So you had cats like the Elder Monk, Guru, the late Fat Mike, all these dudes, they came together and they formed the Black Spades to protect, you know, the families that were in the southeast section of the Bronx. So for people to say and come out and say that hip hop was 50-50 and, you know, the Black Spades was 50-50 Blacks and Puerto Ricans, that is not true. They do not know history. They don't know how hip hop was formulated, but hip hop was born from out of gang culture, specifically the Black Spades. That is a fact. Question.
When you talk about Gangstar, is that the same Guru that you're speaking of, Gangstar?
No. I'm not talking about that Guru. I'm talking about old head Guru. No, Guru, he's still alive. Old head Guru is like in his late, maybe like in his early 70s, late 60s. You know what I mean? He might be like 69, 70, somewhere around there. Guru from Gangstar, he's originally from Boston. Matter of fact, may he rest in completeness. Two different gurus. So I want to make that clear. So getting back to the point, you can go to the next slide. So we see DJ Disco King Mario. He comes, you know, into, you know, the Bronx from North Carolina, roughly around 1967. He becomes a member of the Black Spades, roughly around 1968, around there, late 1968. Him and Guru, not from Gangstar, but the leader of the Black Spades, they have a little fallout. You know what I mean? They fight. You know, DJ Disco King Mario, he was young then. He couldn't handle Guru. He left. But when he came back from down south, back to New York, he came with a unique sound. This is the sound what we know today as hip hop. So when he started bringing these jams outside, remember, this is before Hurt. This is before Bambaataa. This is before Grandmaster Flash. Amongst him was the youth, because you got to remember, even with the late DJ Disco King Mario, who made transition in 1994, he was very young as well. He was like a teenager, 16, 17, around there. So you had dudes like DJ Phase, who was a direct understudy of the late DJ Disco King Mario. And he was rolling around with DJ Disco King Mario when he was like 7 years old, 8, 9, 10. So he's being tutelaged by this DJ here. And this DJ is also being influenced by these young kids that's running around called hip hoppers and beboppers. Okay. And matter of fact, and let me, touch on that real quick. The culture itself is originally wasn't called hip hop. We got to stop saying that. Hip hop originally was the dance, because you was hopping or dancing from the hip. So you had that song, hip hop, bebop, don't stop. So hip hop originally was the dance. Bebop was the music. So people really got it twisted. You see what I'm saying? They think hip hop is the name of the culture itself. Yeah, later on it took on that overtone, but originally when hip hop first, or what is now called hip hop, when it was first being developed, it was bebop. It was more of a upgrade, so to say, or evolution of bebop. But it took a different overtone, and they dance was known as hip hop, because when they was when they was doing these battles, these gangs, they would have these war dances. They were dancing from the hip. So they dance style, and they were dropping to the floor. It became known as hip hop. They dance style, but the music of them rhyming, they still kept that name bebop, even though bebop crossed over from the very late 50s into the 60s, and then in the early 70s. As time went on, when you start getting the third generation of what is now known as hip hop, bebop became transformed into what we now call today as hip hop. And that's just facts. That's just facts. It's no way of getting around it. So now we see here the last poets, because you got to remember the atmosphere that was in place at the time. Remember, Black American culture is the dominant culture. There's no getting around this. We got to stop lying, saying, yeah, it was 50-50, the Puerto Ricans and the blacks. And originally, hip hop came from Jamaica. No, it did not. Kool Herc did not bring anything from Jamaica. Kool Herc told you out of his own mouth that he came as a hick, and he got fly dealing with cats like Coke LaRock and, being influenced by Black American culture. Okay. When he went into school, he thought it was cool to wear on cowboy boots, because during the time of his era, they like cowboy movies over there. Like, they were very influenced by cats like John Wayne and all them. So in Jamaica at that time, they thought wearing cowboy boots was cool. So when Kool Herc came from Jamaica when he was 12 years old to the Bronx, and he was wearing that in junior high school, he was being laughed at. And his shoes were called roach killers. This is what they were saying about this man. So he got his flyness and his swag from Black American culture. There's no way of getting around that. That was the dominant culture. So you're seeing people like Gil Scott Heron. You know what I mean? You see in the Last Poets, you see in the Temptations, you see in the Four Tops, you see in, my man James Brown. You see in all these things. The original Last Poets was founded by my Israelite elder by the name of David Nelson. His name is Zaquin Dawid ben Yisrael. He is the founder of the Last Poets. Later on, a Puerto Rican member would take his place. You have two Last Poets, even though they all Last Poets. You got the original Last Poets and you got the Last Poets because certain new members came. But if you listen to the Last Poets, what were they saying in the late 60s? Automatic, systematic, remote control, genetics, what do you say? Genetics, synthetics, demand your soul. Automatic, systematic, remote control, genetics, synthetics, demand your soul. So they was already laying this foundation of rhyming in a revolutionary way, but through the funk and through this Black power consciousness. This is all Black American, all of it. This is grassroots Black American thought. Facts. That's why the Hispanic member of the Last Poets, what did he create? There go David Nelson right there. You see him with the kippah on, with his Israelite garments on. His name now is Zaquin Dawid ben Yisrael. He's a direct understudy of the late Ben Ami. Okay. He was a late, he's still alive right now. I can bring him on the show. You see what I'm saying? And you see James Brown right there. You see James Brown right there. And James Brown, he is the that why you think when you listen to all them beats from 45 King, when you listen to Pete Rock, who lied and said, yeah, most of hip hop is Jamaican. That's not true. Listen to Pete Rock and CL Smooth. All them beats, Reminisce, Straighten It Out, all them beats is straight James Brown beats. That's a fact. That's a fact. He wasn't, why, if hip hop came from Jamaica, why weren't they sampling Jamaican sound? They wasn't sampling Jamaican sound. The very first ones to cross over that Jamaican sound was the Fat Boys. The Fat Boys were the first ones, and a guy by the name of Shinehead. And he had that joint, don't give me no crack. And you also see KRS-One with listen to my 9mm go bang. Another day, another day. Why? Because you see KRS-One's father was Black American, but his mother was Jamaican, or it might be vice versa. Either his father was Jamaican, his mother was Black American, or vice versa. But we know there's some type of Barbadian, it might be Barbadian. I think he got like Barbadian descent through his mother, something of that nature. So you see these men crossing that over into hip hop. Prior to that, you don't see that. Go to the next slide. So like I said, you see James Brown right there. Go to the next slide. Now, who do we have here? A very interesting man right here. Very interesting. This guy was actually the very first teacher of the late Walter Williams, right? Out in Chicago, Illinois. His name in this group is known as Sun Ra Orchestra. And with Sun Ra Orchestra, they believed, or he believed, that he was an incarnation of an ancient Egyptian deity known as Sun Ra that came from the planet Saturn. And when you listen to Sun Ra Orchestra, you can see the influences that Afrika Bambaataa received from Sun Ra Orchestra, because these men were the first ones to be bringing down the spaceship and the electroism and electrolytes and all that. These men, or this group, Sun Ra Orchestra, would be the founding fathers to influence people like Parliament Funkadelic, Afrika Bambaataa, and the Soul Sonic Force. That's why I'm saying you have two elements of hip hop taking place. Originally, the look was the b-boy look, the gangster look, the gang war look. When Afrika Bambaataa left from amongst those that had that look, he started to go into Manhattan to a place known as the Village. And amongst the Village, he got incorporated and connected to a man by the name of David Bowie. David Bowie. Y'all know who he is. David Bowie, the late David Bowie, he was a musician who himself believed that he was channeling energy from interdimensional beings from other planets. And that's why when you look at some of David Bowie's old movies, you will clearly see that there were heavy influences of this extraterrestrial reality. That's why when you look at the video Planet Rock, you see this spaceship, Parliament Funkadelic Sun Ra Orchestra. Look, the funk. This is coming from foundational Black Americans, African Americans, whatever you want to call us, right? But this is Black Americans that's born in this. Go to the next slide. Go to the next slide. Right here, you see myself. If you go on the far left is original saxophonist. May he rest in completeness. This is Zaquin Absalom Ben Shalomo. He made transition like almost a year ago. On the far right down the bottom, you see me, you see him, you see the late Prince ICL, the master jewel, and the late Prince ICL's son. And on top is my logo. I knew the saxophonist of Sun Ra Orchestra personally. He seen the calling, heard the calling, and he wound up moving to Dimona, Israel, and becoming a direct understudy of the late Ben Ami. So the founder of the Last Poets became a direct understudy of the late Ben Ami. And then you have the original saxophonist that came from out of, the Sun Ra Orchestra, also moved to Dimona and became an understudy of the late Ben Ami. And you see right here, who do you see? Parliament Funkadelic. Picture the mind of Grandmaster Flash in the Furious Five. Picture in your mind Afrika Bambaataa in the Soul Sonic Force. And look at Parliament Funkadelic. Stop right there. Don't go back to them 3 men. Yup. Nope. Go back to Afrika Bambaataa. Yup. Stop right there. So my thing is, when you look at Parliament Funkadelic and they got the spaceships and all that, we can see that Bambaataa was influenced by funk music. His dress came from Parliament Funkadelic and the Sun Ra Orchestra. You see this. You see this clear. And when the Sun Ra Orchestra come out, they came out in the 1950s. Even earlier, some say he go back as far as 1938, 1939. Sun Ra Orchestra. Like these guys, they was around. And they was dealing in this school of thought, going back to ancient Egypt, even, back in them days. So again, the reason why you see me now starting with these 3 men once again, because now it's time to get the meat. Now go to the next slide. So we see now Zulu. Now you might say, damn, why you showing this, Prince, the mighty Hebrew? Because you need to know the foundation. Afrika Bambaataa is not the first to have the name Zulu Nation. Afrika Bambaataa was not influenced by going to Africa, because this is the myth that he went to Africa, and no disrespect to my hip hop heads out in South Africa. Shout out to all my comrades in, Johannesburg and all that's keeping original hip hop alive. But you got some cats over in South Africa that's been lying, right? Saying that hip hop came from out of South Africa, right? And that, Bambaataa came to South Africa, got his name Afrika Bambaataa, being initiated in the Zulus, learning hip hop and taking it back to America. That is a bold-faced lie. That is not true. Afrika Bambaataa got his name from his uncle, who was the original member of the Black Panthers, That's number one. Number two, what was going on roughly around 1974, Bambaataa won an award at his high school because he did a hip hop performance, and he won an award to take a trip originally to India. And when he had to come perform for a panel so that he could solidify that trip, he was giving out flyers, hip hop flyers, and he missed that appointment. So the trip to India got canceled. He wound up doing it again, doing that, that performance. And then he won a trip to Africa in 1975. But the name Zulu came from him watching the 1964 Michael Caine movie, Zulu. He says this out of his own mouth. He was being interviewed by Vlad on Vlad TV, and he said out of his own mouth how he got the name Zulu, because originally Afrika Bambaataa was originally a savage nomad, and later on he became absorbed in the Black Spades, and he became a warlord of the 12th division of the Black Spades. And then within the Black Spades, when the Black Spades started to deteriorate, they broke down into crews. Originally it was the Black Spades, but then they broke down into crews. One of the crews were known as the Casanovas. Then another crew was known as Chuck Chuck City, which was founded by the late DJ Disco King Mario. And then you had Zulu Nation. And the Zulu Nation, their organization within it was known as the Commission. And then it became Zulu Nation, and then you had, Universal Zulu Nation. Excuse me, it was Zulu Nation, then Almighty Zulu Nation. And then you get the Universal Zulu Nation. And this is where different ethnic groups start taking on these overtones when they started to spread all over the world. And within the Zulu Nation, you had something called the Zulu Masters, the 5 Zulu Masters. And within the Zulu Masters, they would battle, people that wanted to become a part of the Zulu Kings. So, no, don't go no further. Nah, you got to go back because you're moving too fast. Because, go back some more.
It seemed like that had something to do with what you were talking about. That's all.
Okay. I got what you said. Yeah, right there, that Zulu Nation right there that you see, that's different right there. And that's what I'm going to get into, because the Zulu Nation that you got right there, that came out in 1966 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, because you had a gang, and my mother was a part of that gang known as Zulu Nation. This is way before Bambaataa. That picture right there is in 1968 right there, that picture that you see. And these are rare pictures, and it was very hard for me to find these pictures, but I found them. But to get back to the point, so you got Bambaataa being influenced by, the movie Zulu by Michael Caine. And he took that name Zulu Nation, and within Zulu Nation, you had the 5 Zulu Masters. All 5 Zulu Masters were Black Americans. And then from there, they would battle people that wanted to burn or break. And that developed what was known as the 11 Zulu Kings. And one of the Zulu Kings was cats like Charlie Rock and people like that. You know what I mean? So you got the Zulu Nation. Within Zulu Nation, you got the 5 Zulu Masters. And with the 5 Zulu Masters, you got the 11 Zulu Kings. 10 of the 11 Zulu Kings were all Black Americans. One was a Black Dominican. This is straight Black American culture, period. Go to the next. What you got right there? Nah, go back. What you got right there? Them words right there. I seen some words. What were them words saying?
That was what you just said. That was okay. Yeah. So.
Okay. And look, now you see Parliament Funkadelic, one of their album covers. What do you see them on? A spaceship. And this is why you see Bambaataa being heavily influenced by Dr. Malachi Z. York, because Malachi Z. York believed that he was an incarnation of the green light from the planet Risk from the 19th galaxy, and he acknowledged himself being 98 trillion years old. So you see, and he was from this planet known as Risk, planet Risk. So you see this spaceship influence. Remember, originally it all came from Sun Ra Orchestra. Sun Ra Orchestra influences Parliament Funkadelic. Parliament Funkadelic is influencing the funk to African Bambaataa. Also, Bambaataa was influenced by that electrolytism. Just, you know, and you've seen that electro, you know, in Japan and London and Germany and all these different places. So you seeing this goulash, so to say, that you're seeing being born, this cult-like influence within hip-hop. So you got two, you know, dimensions of hip-hop. You got those that's coming out of DJ Disco King Mario, which were later born cats like Busy B, Kool Mo D, LL Cool J, you know, Run DMC, that B-boy stand, that cool hood nigga look. But then you got Afrika Bambaataa that is developing a cult within hip hop. And what became born out of that became today the deviancy that you see in hip hop today. So you have two worlds within what is now known as hip hop. Those that the street dude, the B-boy stand, that Just Ice look, that EPMD look. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? When you look at EPMD, that Eric B and Rakim look with the dookie chains, the cool dressing, wearing the velour sweatsuits, the TI sweatsuits, all that. And then you got, because most rappers, they weren't dressing like Grandmaster Flash and Bambaataa enough. Them guys was influenced by the Village. Why you think when you look at Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five and Bambaataa, notice that they got a similar look to the Village people? Why?
So was
because
the Village people, was that the Village? Was that like a gay neighborhood, or was that
yes,
eclectic okay.
Yes, it was a LG, you know, an alphabet, mostly an alphabet community of people that was partying back in the 1970s and all that. This is where you get your Studio 54s and all that. All this is going on, and Bambaataa is being influenced by all that. And that's why, you know, sad to say, but the allegations against this man, we can see, you know, certain influences that's taking place in his life to in turn manifest out these deviant behaviors, because he was being influenced by the power structure that was in place at the time when he was going to the Village, partying with these people. You know what I mean? Partying with these people that, you know, was dealing in disco music, not discotheque, but disco music and different things going on at that time. The electroism, and which later born house music and all that. Go to the next slide.
Let's get it real quick. I'm not sure, this is a sidebar, that at the same time this was happening, this is also when techno music was taking off in Detroit, because it was influenced by Kraftwerk. And then Juan Atkins, like taking like some of the influence from Kraftwerk and Funkadelic, they started groups, but they was not picked up. They would not get picked up by the labels, and that's why they sent the techno sound overseas. And that's why these are black people in Detroit, black, you know, producers in Detroit. And so techno did not start in Europe; it started in Detroit. And then what happened is, because they couldn't get deals in New York, because hip hop was on the rise and they were getting turned down for techno in America, they ended up taking that sound, that electro sound, which is like that doom, doom, boom, doom, boom, 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 doom, doom, that type of sound, which is the same kind of sound as that Afrika Bambaataa had, over to Europe. And that's where you have EDM, which you hear right now.
That's a fact. Techno music, house music was created in Chicago. Techno music was created in Detroit. That's a fact. That's a historical fact. And I'm glad that you brought that historical reality to the surface. Go to the next slide. Now you see the first Zulu Nation, and I mean a gang. Now, I know you got the Zulu Nation parade in New Orleans and stuff like that, but I'm talking about gang culture. The first Zulu Nation documented in the history of Black culture come out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. That's just a fact. You see, you know, you got this old picture here is 1968, but you got older pictures going back as far as 1966. Then you have people saying that Zulu Nation was founded in 1964 from some, but it's a controversy with that. But we know between 1964, 1966, you see Zulu Nation. Zulu Nation got destroyed by the way of getting involved in the heroin business, and they were warned with a group known as the Philadelphia Black Mafia that was founded by the late Sam Christian, Ron Harvey, all these different cats. And when heroin took over, many of the Zulu members got hooked on it, and that's how Zulu Nation became destroyed, because Zulu Nation was the most powerful gang in Philadelphia. You had Zulu Nation, you had the Moroccans, you had the Underworld, you had the Moon Gang. So you had all this gang warring going on in Philadelphia. As a matter of fact, you can get and my father was a part of that, one of the major leaders in the Oxford Street gang. May my late father, Louis Peacock Alil Good, rest in completeness within the Azuletic world of existence, imperial will. And if you go, there's a documentary on YouTube called The Jungle, and it was made in the 1960s, talking about my father's gang from Oxford Street gang. And inside that video, The Jungle, you're going to see them rapping in the 60s, talking about they got my wine, they don't eat swine, stuff like. So cats was already rhyming and jive talking before the inception as we know as hip hop. But all this is brewing hip hop. Right there, you see, this is like, some of this is not in order, but I'm just going to go by what I'm seeing, but it's fine. That man right there is, now we talking about the first element of hip hop. You got 5 elements of hip hop. You have b-boying, breakdancing, b-girling, which is also connected to pop locking, DJing, rap, right? Graffiti, and knowledge. Now, a lot of people try to say, oh man, graffiti, the first graffiti art, they were spent. No, they weren't. No, they weren't. Now, tagging your name comes straight from gang culture, comes straight from out of gang culture in the 1940s in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Now, the one to make it into an artistic form in 1960 and 1966 would be a man by the name of Cornbread, and that's him right there. And when he was in the St. Gabe's, which was a juvenile detention center, he started writing Cornbread all over to make a name for himself. The difference from Cornbread and everybody else that was just tagging their name, those that were tagging their name, they were just identifying the gang they was in. Whereas the Cornbread, he made it into an artistic form, and he wanted to like make a name for himself, to the point where he started hitting Cornbread in places where you be like, damn, here's 2 stories, quick stories. One of the stories was Cornbread was dead, and there was a dude that they confused Cornbread with, and they put in the Daily News that Cornbread was dead, and Cornbread read that, and he was like, oh no, I'm not dead. So he snuck in the Philadelphia Zoo. This was roughly around 1970, somewhere around there. And he took a spray paint bottle and he wrote "Cornbread Lives" on both sides of an elephant in the Philadelphia Zoo. Got caught by the police, and when the police caught him, he went in front of the judge, and the judge called him over to the bench and asked him for an autograph because his name was all over the city. Another thing that he did was when the Jackson 5 came to Philadelphia, they private plane. You know how back in the day when, you know, celebrities would get off the plane, they would let, you know, they fans be there in like crowds, welcoming them. So when they were being welcome, Cornbread snuck on the Jackson 5 plane and spray painted "Cornbread was here." So he made it into an artistic form. So this is why it wasn't 1966, it was 1965. So the reason why Cornbread is known as the godfather of graffiti is because, from out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, is because he was the one that made it into an artistic form. He made it, he's the one that came with the crowns and the bubbles and stuff like that and making it cool, so to say, and it spread it all over the world. He started traveling all over the world, writing "Cornbread was here. Cornbread lives. He's cornbread, cornbread." And he got that name Cornbread because he was in the detention center and he always wanted cornbread. So then people just, start calling him Cornbread. So foundational Black Americans are the founders of graffiti. Now, one might say, man, graffiti come out of New York. No, it don't. It was introduced to New York. It was a boy by the name of Tacky 126. What was his name? Not Tacky. I forgot his name. But it'll come back to me. But he was from like 32nd and Dolphin, and he brought graffiti known as gangster style to New York. And the graffiti artists from New York that came later, they would develop something called Broadway elegant. So when you're talking about Tacky and all them from out of New York, they learned that, from a Black American bringing that to New York. Graffiti was created in Philly. The original graffiti artists come out of Philly. That's why the oldest graffiti night social clubs, they all come out of Philadelphia. All the oldest, and they were influenced, these social groups were influenced by Black fraternity, groups that came out of Temple University, stuff like that. So they were calling themselves like Alpha, Sigma, such and such, Alpha, such and such. These social clubs that came from out of Philly. And then it spread, because at one time, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania was known as the graffiti capital of the United States. Then it went over to New York. So that has to be made clear. The guy that brought it over was Top Cat. I told you the name of come. His name was Top Cat 126. He came from around 32nd and Dolphin, 32nd and Diamond, around that way. And he took gangster style graffiti to New York, which later became known as Broadway elegant. Another graffiti style that came out, which originally was known as tagging, and then it became known as wicked. All that stuff come from out of Philly. That's why when you look at some of the best murals, if not the best murals in the world, they're in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The best mural artists, quiet as it's kept, come from out of Philly, not New York. So the first element of hip hop we see is graffiti. Okay, we see graffiti. All right, and you see, look at Cornbread saying, Cornbread, world's first writer, 1965. Come on now, this is our history. We're not going to start with Bambaataa. This is before Bambaataa. This is 1965. Go to the next slide. Let's get the next slide. So now who do we have here? Who do we have at Cab Calloway? One like, well, why are you bringing him up? Oh, easy. Because when you talk in jive talk, you go to the Cab Calloway dictionary, you'll see words like hip hoppers and all that, them hippity hoppers. And that word hip hop was created by Black Americans. Being cool, you know, because you got to remember jazz and the Harlem Renaissance and all, a lot of them words like, look at that cool cat. All that stuff was created by Black Americans. And it's funny that when you talk about DJ Kool Herc, even within his name, Kool, that's Black American, even though Kool Herc was Jamaican. The point that I'm saying is all this is being influenced by the dominant culture. The dominant culture was Black American culture. So we got Cab Calloway dictionary right here. And you see all the jive name. Listen, what they now call hip hop as a culture, there was a spirit behind it. That cool swag, walk and fly, job talk, all that's Black American. That didn't come from Puerto Rico. And no disrespect. No disrespect. Again, no disrespect. But truth is the truth. When Puerto Ricans originally came, they were distant from Black America. They was listening to merengue and salsa music and all that. They was not dealing with no, they was calling that, you know, jungle bunny music and that Moreno music. That's why Crazy Legs and all them, they were saying when other Puerto Ricans were looking at them when they was doing, you know, breakdance, they was like, that's that original Moreno style. That's that Moreno, what they call up rock that you see in the Puerto. See, originally what they call break dancing, originally burning. It was originally, what's the word I'm looking for? They were breaking to the beat. But later, when Puerto Ricans adopted it with the up rock, they were offbeat. You got to go back because I seen you had Pig Meat Marhelm. You know, you passed Pig Meat Marhelm. That was the one that you right there with Here Comes the Judge. It's a little out of order, but it's cool. You know, you got Pig Meat Marhelm right there. This is who the original Baby
That's FYI because I know it's out of order. I like do flash the next one coming up, so you know what's about to come up because I know it's out of order. So I'm flashing what's next.
Okay.
If it's relevant, I'll keep it on there. So I knew you were still talking about Cab Calloway, so I kept it on there. But yeah.
Okay. Indeed. And matter of fact, go to the next slide since we still on Cab Calloway. Go to the next slide right there. And as you can see right there, you know, Cab Calloway is major when it comes to understanding hip hop and just Black American culture and talking that jive talk. When you look at the Black exploitated movies, you don't see no Jamaican Black exploitated movies like that, and no Hispanic exploitated movie. No, this is Black American culture, man. This is Black American culture. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. And we're not saying this to belittle anybody. You know what I'm saying? This is why I named this Afrika Bambaataa, the truth and the myth. Yes, the truth is Bambaataa did contribute to hip hop. Grandmaster Flash, he contributed to hip hop. DJ Kool Herc, he contributed to hip hop. But they weren't the creators of hip hop. They weren't the founders of hip hop. There were those that came before them. What about DJ John Brown? What about DJ Pete Jones? What about Grandmaster Flowers? Right? What about, that's where Grandmaster Flash got his name from. The original Grandmaster, come out of Brooklyn, New York, known as Grandmaster Flowers. And they got the name Grandmaster because they were influenced by what? Martial arts. And there are more than 5 elements of hip hop. You got fashion, you got martial art. All this is influencing the minds of these gangs, but mainly the black space, because the hip hop come from out of that Pacific gang. That's just facts. That's why you don't see no other gangs in New York saying anything in opposition to that. Anytime you talk about the foundation of hip hop, you got to talk about the black space. There's no way you can get around that. If you don't mention the black spades, then you're not a hip hop connoisseur. You're not. You got, and when you mention the black spades, you're talking Black American culture. Go to the next picture. That's right. Go to the next. Like I said, Pygmy Marham. He's the one, 1968. Here comes the judge. This is who these baby spades was imitating. Hear ye, right? And he was rapping, just about to do that thing. I don't mean to brag, I don't mean to boast. And and one of the two. They're getting it from Pygmy Marham. All these people were from the Carolinas and moved up to New York. Why you think, if you look carefully, right? Let's keep it a beam. If you look at people from California, they origins, you see them going back to Texas and the Carolinas and areas like that, right? Then when you see us over in the East Coast, we have influences from the Carolinas. What we call it hip hop, it became codified into what we see today. But these elements existed. They existed amongst our people. And this is why, look at James Brown. He was from down south. All these DJ Disco King Mario, he was from down south. When you talk about cats like Coke La Rock, the original Coke La Rock. Before Coke La Rock, you ain't hear nobody with Coke or La Rock in their name. Scott La Rock, Taylor Rock, huh? If you look at, what's my name? What's my man? A1 Sasa. You got the group known as you got the group Star Child La Rock. The group Star Child La Rock, they were influenced by the original B-boy that used to B-boy for Kool Herc, a man by the name of Sasa, right? A1 Star Child. And then you have Coke La Rock. So you get the Star Child from Sasa, and then the Coke from Coke La Rock. Now you got Star Child La Rock. They were influenced by Black Americans. Coke La Rock was the very first MC in hip hop. Now, it's a different from being an MC versus a rapper. The very first rapper that we see in Black American culture in hip hop would be DJ Hollywood. Now, this is not to say before then people wasn't rhyming. When you talk about Pygmy Marham, give a shout out to Busy B. I see Busy B right there. When you talking about Pygmy Marham, he was rhyming, but he was rhyming off of bebop. You see what I'm saying? It wasn't rap, but it was like a rhyme form within bebop that will help to born this rap sound. So you see him, and then you see these baby spades doing the dozens. Your mama this, your mama so old, your mama so skinny that she could hula hoop in a Cheerio, stuff like that. And then these young spades and baby spades, they were bagged at Pathmark. And at Pathmark, they was getting like $30, $40 a day. These little kids, and they would save their money up. And then at the end of the week, they go get them like a gold medallion. You know, they was the ones you see Green Eye Stan that made the Timberland, you know, what it is today, and rocking the suede green Pumas and Puma sweatsuits and all that, and wearing British Walkers and the V necks and the mock necks and you know, and rocking the Playboy shirts and all that is being born from out of this gang known as the Black Spades, and they formulating this hip hop. You got, yeah, you going too far. Yeah, right. No. Go back to Busy B. No, that's cool. Right there. You cool right there. So you got Busy B. This one, the first battle rapper. So
wait. Before you go any further, I'm sorry, because we're gonna get more current and stuff like that. But before we go any further, I just gotta give a shout out to Betty Davis. She is a huge influence on a lot of the female hip hop rap, you know, in this, and as well as Millie Jackson. I just want to give a shout out to them too, because you do get a lot of the female influence from those two people. So I just wanted to just throw that out there for the women rappers.
Absolutely. And we definitely gonna get, oh man, we ain't even get to Tila Rock and the man, and the before Roxanne Shante. We ain't even get into some of the Zulu queens and all that. You know what? I'm gonna do a separate show on the founding daughters of hip hop. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people don't really speak about our sisters that was the backbone of hip hop. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people don't speak about, you know, our sisters. So I'm definitely going to come with a PowerPoint presentation on that. So like I said, you have a difference from rapping and being an MC. Coke Rock, he was an MC, meaning he would be like, throw your hands in the air and wave them like you just don't care. If T's in the house, say, ah. That was what Coke Rock was doing. But then when you get DJ Hollywood, now he rhyming to a beat. He rapping to the beat. And then you get in these guys like Busy B, the first battle rapper. Busy B was the first battle rapper. This is why that battle rap with Busy B and Kumo D was so big, even though, you know, and the end, you know, Busy B lost that one. But for years, he had that crown, you know, battling people. So Busy B was known for being a battle rapper back in the 70s. You see what I'm saying? So and that's Busy B right now, today, how he look. Go to the next slide. Right there is A1 Star Child Sasa. You know what I mean? So we got A1 Star Child Sasa, original B-boy. Original B-boy before. That's what I'm saying. When people try to say, oh no, the original first break dancers were Black Americans. There go Sasa. And they try to say, oh, Sasa was Puerto Rican. No, he's not. He's a Black American. He just liked the name. Right there is the legendary twins. Originally, they were known as the Nigger Twins. But as years developed, they changed their name to the legendary twins. They were a part of the original B-boys of go back right there. They were a part of DJ Kool Herc's dancers. And originally, DJ Kool Herc's system was known as the Herculoid. And later on, they associated DJ Kool Herc's dancers with the system that he had, and they became known, all of his dancers, as the Herculoids. But originally the Herculoid was the sound system. Okay.
I have a question about that too.
Yeah.
The movie Breaking, and then you had Breaking, and then you had the other one, Beat Street. Oh, no, was it Beat Street?
Yeah. Yeah, you had Breaking came out after Beat Street. Yes.
Right. So Beat Street is probably the most original. But I think that was Breaking more of a commercial movie considered for hip hop, and then Beat Street was like an original movie.
I mean, both of them had lies in it, but they also had the truths. Breaking, you could see the influence of the Electric Boogaloo and all that going on over there in California. Because even when you're talking pop locking, quiet as it's kept, pop locking came out in 1968. So you see in this vibe, that's why I'm saying that hip hop is more deeper than what we're talking.
So was pop locking based out of New York or out of LA?
Out of LA. LA.
So Breaking was about the advent of hip hop
what was going on
in LA.
In LA.
Time.
Right.
Okay, so you had those two kind of not rival movies, but one just showing one side of the coin of what was going on there, and then you had the New York side, which was Beat Street. Okay,
right. But the thing that I did, and Beat Street was a dope movie, but see where the confusion is coming in is when you look at Beat Street. You see the graffiti, you see the break dance and all that. And who do you see on there? You see Rocksteady Crew, stuff like that, right? We have this influence that the Hispanics were always there, because the reality is when the Hispanics adopted breakdance and all that, Black people already stopped breakdancing. They already stopped. The original Black breakdancers stopped roughly around 1977, 1978, because Black people, they were getting what was known as fly or Dougie. They were cool. Cats was cool. So they didn't want to get their clothes dirty no more. See, the thing is, when
the inventor of breakdancing, Trixie, aka Lori Myers, said
he was a Black
created or what? Black from the Bronx or Brooke from the Bronx, right?
Yes, he was a Black man. That man right there was a Black man, and Trixie is known as the first break dancer. Trixie came roughly around 1969, 1970. And
so by the time those movies came out, those guys were kind of too old to be in the movie. Is that what it was?
Yeah, they were already old. They were already older by then. You know what I'm saying? When you see the Puerto Ricans, all that, what they did was they fused up rocking with burning / breakdancing, and it became known as modern day breakdancing. That's why if you look at the Puerto Ricans and all that, when they were breakdancing, they weren't breakdancing on the beat. The Black breakdancers, they were breakdancing on the beat. That's why I was saying break dance. You would dance on the break, but you be on beat. They're the ones that went off beat because of the acrobatics and all that different stuff. But there was a Black American by the name of Beaver. He's the one that influenced all them when you start talking about, the dudes, the New York City Rockers and all these different cats, they were influenced by Black Americans. Originally, breakdancing or burning was a Black American dance style. But Black Americans got tired of getting their clothes dirty. They was in that fly type of vibe. That's why, see, when I look at B-boy, like one of the elements is B-boying. I don't look at B-boying just as this breakdancing alone. To me, B-boying is any dance style that's influenced by what is now known as hip hop. So if you're doing the Cabbage Patch, the Steve Martin, the Running Man, the WAP, anything dancing pertaining to hip hop, That's b-boying. But with the Hispanics that kept breakdancing alive, to them, b-boying is just only breakdancing. That's not true. That's how you know it don't come from them, because we evolved. Black America, we constantly making different dances within hip hop. The Steve Martin, the Alf, the Flavor Flav, the Steve Martin. We constantly, you know, do different we do different styles and different dances. The Kid and Play. We're constantly grooving off of the sound of what is now known today as hip hop. But with them, they still stuck in just breakdancing only. Even when you look at breakdancing today, look at black people today that do break. They done took that thing to a whole nother level. These dudes is gliding like they in the Matrix. They took it to a whole nother level. So give a shout out to Trixie. I know Trixie. You know what I mean? I did an interview with Trixie. Now go back. Right there, you see Zulu Kings right there. That's one of the Zulu Kings, like they jackets. But these are all Black Americans. Now you can go to the next slide. And who you see, the Rocksteady crew right there. You see what I'm saying? The Rocksteady crew, they came out in 1979 with Crazy Legs, JoJo, all them, and they let you know, even though they try to change their stance to align with Fat Joe Lie, but if you look at all the old footage of the Rocksteady crew, they let you know that the very first people they ever seen breakdance was Black Americans.
So were those crew, was it just like in B Street where the blacks were battling against the Hispanics in the when they would have battles?
No. In B Street, it was a mixture. And one side versus the other side, they both had Puerto Ricans and blacks together, just battling each other. You know what I mean?
Maybe that was breaking. Maybe that was more on breaking, where you had like the more Hispanic crew battling the mixed crew or whatever.
But in B Street, I know what you're talking about. In B Street, you had one group that had on the red, and then the other group had on blue and white. The ones that had on blue and white, even though they were black people in their group, it was predominantly Hispanic. And then the red group, it was Hispanic, but more blacks. So it appeared as such, but if you watch it carefully, it was a mixture. But that's the persona that they try to put out there.
Like there was a battle between the Hispanics versus the blacks. That's what I remember. Even me being a kid, that's how all those movies made it like the black, like the Hispanic ones were always trying to battle.
Hispanics came later. They came later. But that's what I'm saying. Movies like Beat Street and Breaking and all that, they put that lie out there as if they were always there, and they just weren't. That's why I'm showing you the original break dancers were dudes like Dancing Doug, James Bond, A1 Star Child Salsa, Trixie, the Nigga Twins, also known as the legendary twins, Beaver. All these dudes were Black Americans. They were the founders of Burning, which later became known as breakdancing. Dudes from Black Spades known as Monk. All these dudes was breakdancing or burning. That's why you would hear cats when they would battle each other and dancing. They'd be like, man, I'm about to burn this nigga.
So here's a question. When you say breakdancing, I mean, because you say you're up rock, but then you have the floor work, the footwork. So what about windmilling and all the hand, the twirl like on your head?
All that came from, that all came from Beaver, a Black American.
Okay. All that came from Beaver. So the Hispanics, what did they bring? Did they bring the pop in?
They brought with it, no. What they brought was something called up rock, and that's even being contested. But I'm not going to get into that in this show. But up rock is something that what the Hispanics did was they took their style and they intertwined it with the already existing break dancing from Black Americans, and created modern breakdancing.
When
And
you say
that's why
uprock, that's similar to the rerun style thing where you kind of like do all that.
No, we run. That's the that's the electric boogaloo. That's different. That's different. The uprock is when you see when they first about to break and they kind of dance a little bit like uprock and then they drop to the floor. You know what I'm saying? But
Okay, I know what you're
that's
talking
what they
about. Where you hit the boom kick to down, and then you boom bow
right,
boom boom bow.
right,
It's like you
right,
might do a boom pose boom boom ah,
right,
and it's like a fight
right.
is going on, y'all. It's
That's it right
similar to
there.
capoeira. You know how capoeira is, where you
Exactly.
like you're
That's
fighting each other,
exactly
but
that's
yeah, I know.
exactly where uprock. That's exactly where uprock is, right there. And don't get it twisted. Hispanics did contribute. They did help to keep breakdancing alive. We can't take that away from them. But what I'm saying is they're not the creators of breakdance. So that has to be made clear. Next slide. There go Jocko the Bear Henderson. Now we getting into the element of DJing. Because you always hear the argument, yeah, DJ Kool Herc, he brought the DJ sound and Bambaataa and all these different people. No. So let's break down the history real quick. Back in the 40s and 50s and all that, that Jamaica was under British rule. So there were it was a bunch of free radios were given to the Jamaican people from the British. And what the Jamaicans were doing, they were tapping into the music from down south, listening to people like Jocko the Bear Henderson, Wolfman Jack, all these different people, right? And when they was listening to dudes like Jocko the Bear, you heard Jocko, doing the dozens and, rhyming and stuff like that. He is what influenced the minds of the Jamaicans to create what they would later call toasting. Toasting was born from out of Black American disc jockeying down south. These are just facts. And what happened, many of the Jamaicans were looking for work. And when they would look for work, they would go to Florida to pick oranges. And during the nightlife, during the weekends, many of these Jamaicans would go to these juke joints where they would listen to bebop and doo-wop and all this stuff and watching Black American culture and dance. And one of these Jamaican brothers, I forgot his name, but he seen the Black American jukeboxes and he took it back to Jamaica and created the first sound systems over there from learning from Black Americans. Remember, if you listen to old Jamaican music from the 50s and 60s and all them, look at Bob Marley and the Wellers. They was trying to be the Four Tops. They was trying to be Dionne Warwick and Diana Ross, and they was influenced by Patti LaBelle and and Miles, not Miles Davis. What's his name? I was going to say, the blues singer. What's the blues singer? He'll come, but the major blues player, singer, and all, they was influenced by them guys. That's why I go look at they was sampling and re-singing Black American R&B, rhythm and blues, and soul music. That's a fact. And when you go to original Jamaican pioneers, they tell you that. They tell you that they was influenced. Busta Rhymes is lying when he say that hip hop, 98% of hip hop come from Jamaica. No, it don't. No, it don't. Jamaicans were influenced by Black Americans. It's the other way around. It's the other way around. They're running around talking about, oh, it come from Jamaican toast. No, it don't. No, it don't. Toasting come from Black American dozen sound. That's where it come from. And they were influenced by the disc jockeys from down south. Next slide. That's a fact. There go the 5 Zulu masters right there. They were all Black Americans, man. This is light work. This is light work. And anybody that understand hip hop know it's Black American culture. Yes, Puerto Ricans and Jamaicans, they contributed to hip hop. We can't take that away from them. Much respect to their contribution. But what they not going to do and say that they the creators of hip hop or they were 50-50 of hip hop. No. They when Puerto Ricans came amongst blacks in the Bronx, they would listen to totally different music than us. Totally. All we got to do is look at the crates. Go into their parents' houses back in that time and look at them crates. Salsa, merengue, stuff like that. They wasn't listening to no James Brown and they weren't listening to no Miles Davis. They weren't listening to no Billie Holiday. They weren't listening to no Four Tops, The Temptations. They weren't listening to Sly Stone and none. No, they learned that from what you call those that were, down by law, so to say. The Puerto Ricans that were down by law, they were being influenced by Black American culture. And their peers would laugh at the Puerto Ricans that were acting like Morenos. Talking about, what's up with that jungle music you listening to? What's that jungle dancing that you doing? That jungle bunny dancing that you doing? They weren't the, yes.
So I had a guy on here named Brother Oba. He's he's initiated into Lukumi, and he's from New York. And he was talking about there was a heavy Black Cuban influence from the jazz bands in Cuba into hip hop as well. Are you aware about that? Like some of the music that was with the breaks?
That's false. That's false. That's false.
So they weren't using some of the breaks from Cuban records.
They were. Let's make it clear. Cuban jazz was influenced by the Harlem Renaissance jazz. Okay, it was influenced by Black American jazz, and then they created their own sound. That's why you got Cuban jazz. They call that Latin jazz or something of that nature. They I forgot what they call it. Afro Latino jazz, or they got a name for it. But
what's that one song where they be like, come on, boy, let's rock it. It'd be like, it's like that.
No problem. Right, no problem. But jazz existed before Cubans were even involved in jazz.
Well, I would say as far as hip hop, like as far as breaks, were they using Cuban? Like, because I know that particular
just because you
know what I'm talking about, that song that goes like that.
I gotta make, that's when the arguments that Dr. Derek Cologne uses. No, I do not take that stance. Just because we might, because remember, hip hop is fusion music. You know what I mean? Just because we take a certain sound, that don't mean that they created anything. You see what I'm saying? We took sounds from a variety of different. You would see, hip hop artists taking sounds from country music, calypso music, acid jazz, punk music, all different types of sounds. But that don't mean that they were creators of that. You see what I'm saying? The facts remain that
most people are black.
I know. Yeah, but they're not Black Americans. Just because they're Black, I want to make it. I don't even want to say that they Black. And the reason why I'm saying that, because originally the term black was a geopolitical social construct that was only identified with Black Americans. It was Black Americans that looked at other people that were dark skinned and start labeling them black. Over here in Africa, you don't hear nobody calling themselves black. That was strictly Black American. And then later on, because you had dark-skinned people that was around us, Dominicans, Cubans, Jamaicans, Barbadians, Haitians, different people that was around us, we would just say, oh, they black too. But originally, black was a social construct that was imposed on Black Americans by white America. And then later on, it took different overtones based on Black Americans calling other people black. Now, that's just a fact. Now, when you talk about this sound, this Cuban sound in hip hop, yeah, we took different sounds and we played with it. But the foundators of hip hop was dealing with strictly James Brown, Sly Stone, Temptations. Most of the sound that you hear them founding fathers and mothers of hip hop, it was coming from out of Philadelphia in and out. We talking Teddy Pendergrass. We talking Earth, Wind, and Fire, Blue Magic, Cat. This is the sounds that was influencing the founders of hip hop. The difference from my argument versus everybody else's is my sources is coming directly from the founders of hip hop. I'm talking about the original founders of hip hop were the Baby Spades. It's no get. We talking documented evidence. So we talking Young Blackjack. We talking Green Eye Stan, the one that created the certain aura and look, how we are to display ourselves as a b-boy. That come from him. When you talking about the two turntables, the mic, the drum and all, now you talking about DJ Phase. These are the direct founders of hip hop. Now we got here DJ Hollywood. Now it's argued that DJ Hollywood was he a hip hop DJ? No, he was a disco DJ, which he later incorporated himself into hip hop, because you got to remember DJ Hollywood, he was a DJ out in Harlem, where you talking about cats like Nicky Barnes, Frank Lucas, that's DJ Phase right there. Frank Lucas, all these different cats. Go back though. I want you to go back to DJ Hollywood. Stay right there. He was DJing in these social nightclubs for cats that was getting money, the big timers, the ballers. He was DJing for them type of people. And at these nightclubs or these discotheques, he start rapping on beat. So he would be the first rapper, so to say, on beat, whereas the Coca Rock would be the first MC, the first master of ceremonies as it pertained to hip hop. So you got DJ Hollywood right there, right? That, was DJing at these nightclubs where cats in Harlem was getting money. And remember, the black space, the youth in the black space, they was imitating the cool cats that was getting money, but they just formulated it into a street look. As you see today, if you go into a hood in North Philly, Chicago, New York, Detroit, Cali, you will see dudes in the hood with the chains on, wearing the hood clothes, the Tim boots, whatever. It was born from out of a Baby Spade known as Green Eye Stan, DJ Phase, Young Blackjack, all these, they found that look. And then you have the upscale cats that was getting money. So now you're talking about cats like Nicky Barnes, Frank Lucas, the Philadelphia Black Mafia, the different Detroit players and all that, getting money and all that. So you got two scales that's being influenced. Go to the next slide. Watch this. It's going to get deep. Let's get it. Go to the next slide. Now you see DJ Phase. That is one of the direct original founders of hip hop. You can't, and he's still alive. We can't get around that. And shout out, and he's a close friend of mine. Shout out to DJ Faze. So we talk, he can give you the direct story how they created it. See, it's a difference from being a pioneer versus being a creator of it. So he's actually one of the original baby spades that helped to create hip hop. So that's the difference. Next slide. So now you see the late original Grandmaster. That's Grandmaster Flowers that come out of Brooklyn, New York. He was before Grandmaster Flash. Remember, before Grandmaster Flash was a DJ, he was a b-boy. That proves that hip hop existed before the three said founding fathers. They are not Flash, Bambaataa, and Hurt. They're not the founders of hip hop.
Here's a question I have to ask you. Why would they call them Grandmaster? Was there like a ranking system in the DJ world?
Why were they Grandmasters? They were Grandmasters because they were influenced by martial arts. They were influenced by Kung Fu movies. So they would just, when you DJing, Grandmaster. You know what I mean? But they were influenced by Kung Fu movies back in the late 60s and 70s and all that. Martial arts, Kung Fu was highly, an influencer amongst our people. That's why even when you watch the movie The Warriors, you see martial arts in that. When you watch, Last Dragon, Leroy, all the martial arts was always a big thing in Black American communities. When you look at a lot of the revolutionary organizations from the Black Liberation Army, when you look at the Black Panthers and many others, they were influenced by martial arts. So when you see these cats with the names Grandmaster, that means they were influenced by martial arts movies. Next slide. Now, here we go. Here we go. Now, we see a man here by the name of Clarence 13X, also known as Father Allah or Putin. Or if you go get a brief docu piece known as The Bomb, because now one might say, well, why are you showing the founder of the 5% Nation? Simple, because one of the elements of hip hop, the fifth element, is knowledge. So we got to see what was influencing the minds of the people at that time when hip hop was being developed. So now you see Clarence 13X right there. He come from out of Virginia. He's a Black American that said that the original man, or the Black man in the United States, the Asiatic Black man, was arm, leggy, leggy, arm, head, Allah, arm, leg, arm, head. You know what I'm saying? So you see the nation gods and earth, you see a heavy influence of them in the 80s and 90s. Eric B. Rakim, King's Son, all these different cats, Poor Righteous Teachers. And then he evolved into the Israelite culture, stuff like that. So you see this influence and knowledge through this foundational Black Americans. Next slide. There, in the name of Allah, we see the universal flag right there. And you see the seven, and the sun, the moon, the stars, the seven. This is foundational Black Americans. Next slide. You see in hip hop right there, you see the nation gods and earth. They took on the name Nation Gods and Earth later. The original name was the 5% Nation. And you see their influence in hip hop. You see what I'm saying? The 5% Nation, or the Nation Gods and Earth, they play a major role in the mental or the mind state of the people when it comes to knowledge within the hip hop community. Next slide. You see our flag as Hebrew Israelite Sovereign Nationals. You just seen the universal flag. Now you see our flag. Next slide. You see the late Ben Ami right there. Hebrew Israelites played a major role in the minds of the people. Remember, you got the founder of the last poets, David Nelson. He was an Israelite. The original saxophonist within the Sun Ra Orchestra, right? You see, go back to Ben Ami. I don't want to move too fast. Go right there. The original saxophonist. We see Absalom Absalom ben Shalomo, Israelites. You see Mysterious Misfits. You see Killer Priests, Sons of Man, your late husband. You see in this Israelite influence within the hip hop community. You see NDRE with Prince Dr. Amiel HaKohen with the song Israel Sky. You see NDRE heavily influenced with the Israelites over in Damona. You see Erykah Badu when she first came out. You see the influences, the admixture of the fusionism of the nation gods and earth, Afrocentric Israelite thought. You see what I'm saying? You see one of her baby fathers, Andre 3000, rocking the turbans, and you see Outkast with Aliens, they album. You see the influences of Dr. York. And when you see Dr. York, they was originally known as Ansar Allah. And they were known as Nubian Islamic Hebrew. There go your late husband right there, rocking the turban. He was the first that you see him in the hip hop community in the United States rapping in Hebrew. You see what I'm saying? So you see in this influence, remember, one of the 5 elements of hip hop is knowledge. And if y'all don't know, DJ Genesis, you know, her late husband was a part of the Detroit rap group known as Slum Village. Okay, banging like, oh man, all their music is banging. You know what I mean? And Detroit is heavily, you know, involved in the original hip hop. Give a shout out to my elder, my Zaquane DJ Los. Go to the next slide. Hit that next slide. You see the nation gods and earth. You see that B-boy stand right there in the middle. And you see when the break dancers, after they finish breaking, they jump up and they give you that B-boy stand. That come from the nation gods and earth. That come from the 5%. That's where it come from. You see what I'm saying? So it's all right there. Now you get the Nation of Islam flag, freedom, justice, and equality, right? Islam, freedom, justice, and equality, right? Next slide. You can't forget about the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. There's no way you can forget that man. That man, regardless of what anybody want to say, whatever they boo-hoo, you know, disbeliefs of him, etc. This is a man who only had a 4th grade education, right? That influenced the masses of not only just the United States, but all over the earth.
Well, you know, he said a 3rd grade, but that's a Masonic term.
No, absolutely. You say what?
He said 3rd grade, but it was a Masonic reference. 3rd grade.
Yeah, I know you trying to say it's Masonic, but through his records, it do say that he only went to the 3rd grade. You know what I'm saying? Through the records, you know, his school records and stuff like that. But one can flip it and they could say 3rd grade meaning 3rd degree. You know what I mean? And we know that, you know, Elijah Muhammad was heavily influenced with the Moorish Science Temple. And he also they say he was a Mason. You know what I'm saying? They do say that Elijah Muhammad, and many of our pioneers that were before us were Masons. Even in the Israelite community, you had dudes by the name of what's his name, William S. Crawley. You know what I mean? That came in 1847. He was a Mason. You know what I'm saying? So even you had Israelite leaders and Nation of Islam leaders. They even say Minister Louis Farrakhan. He's also a Mason. So we've heard these things before. You know what I'm saying? So we want to give a shout out to the late Honorable Elijah Muhammad, because he showed that if you can bring a people together, they can preserve themselves. He's the one that influenced people, even though it was those before him. We see in Black Wall Street, and we also see Prophet William S. Crawley that came from out of Maryland, and you see him moving up to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, mainly up on Lombard in South Philadelphia, where he had his own barbershops and grocery stores and schools and tabernacles and all that. So you see him being a major entrepreneur before Elijah Muhammad. But what I can say about Elijah Muhammad, he organized it in a way that you haven't seen since now IUIC. When you look at IUIC, them Israelites with Bishop Nathaniel, he's taking that thing to a whole nother level. And I mean, them guys is all over the world. There's no way you can deny the work, but you can see that he was even influenced by the late Prophet William S. Crawley, Elijah Muhammad, and others. Now, here we are in Dimona. This is in the early 1970s. I'm showing these photos so we can see that hip hop is being influenced by this diffusionism, so to say. You got, the funk, the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, the Hebrew Israelites, the Moorish Science Temple, the Nation of Islam, the Shrine of the Black Madonna. All this stuff is going on at one time in the 1960s, which is influencing these baby spades and young spades within the Black space. Because you got to remember, at the time, many of these young youths, parents, they were hooked on heroin, they were hooked on drugs. Bronx, New York is a fucking war zone. It's a war zone, a dilapidated, burnt down buildings. You know what I mean? You see him right there, Noble Drew Ali. You know what I mean? You see the Nation of Islam. Noble Drew Ali was before Elijah Muhammad. Noble Drew Ali came in 1913. He the one that started in New Jersey, that Canaanite temple, which were born later on the Moorish Science Temple of America, Incorporated. So you're seeing this influence, this goulash, so to say, of all this combined to born hip hop. But all this is foundational Black Americans. There's no way of getting around it. You see the heavy influences. Go listen to X-Clan. Go listen to Poor Righteous Teacher. Go listen to Queen Latifah. Go listen to these pioneers in hip hop. Even when you listen to Grandmaster Flash and Melly Mel, the Furious Five, Broken Glass, everywhere. People walk around like they just don't care. Don't push me because I'm close to the edge. They were already, this consciousness, so to say, was born from out of the resistance against white America. So this ain't got nothing to do with Bambaataa. He influenced hip hop, but again, he wasn't the founder. Go to the next slide. Is that the last slide?
Yeah, that is the last slide, but I did want to ask a question.
Yes.
So one thing I do see missing in the slide is the influence of Dr. York. I know, he got like some bad things about him too that people said that people are saying that he did. But Dr. York was very heavily, at least in the most recent like hip hop, like when you had like the whole, what was it called, the Soul Quimini and the whole like Erykah Badu era. They were heavily influenced by Dr. York. And then the Zulu Nation, I think that they were heavily, they came in the 80s or the 90s when you had like the X-Clan, when you had Self-Destruction, you had the, when you had, okay, there was like a whole time frame when you had Tribe Called Quest. What were they called? The Ummah. The Ummah?
Oh, you talking about Tribe Called? They were called Tribe Called Quest and all them. They were known as Native Tongues.
Native Tongues. But who was the Ummah?
I heard of them before. I don't know where that name came from.
I think that was from Tribe Called Quest. Either that or was it from, that was Tribe Called Quest called the Ummah. And then you had the Ummah, then you had the you had Native Tongues, it was a whole movement that happened when they all did Self-Destruction. And you had KRS-One, you had Busta Rhymes in them. Or no, it wasn't the Busta Rhymes. It was D Nice. What was his name? My name is D Nice. And then what was the other one?
Public Enemy. I know Public Enemy. All of them with the stuff. Yes.
Yeah. And what's the other with the curly hair? Special Ed. Yeah. Like, so you had like this whole movement of hip hop that was I don't even know what was. I believe that their probably influence was a combination of like this Zulu Nation.
Right, but Dr. York was definitely, and I mentioned, I should have put him in the slide. I wasn't thinking, but definitely Dr. York, and I may mention constantly throughout this presentation, but Dr. York was a major influence because a lot of people don't know that many of the rappers from the late 80s and 90s would go to Bushwick, New York and use Dr. York's studio. So Jay-Z, Jazzo, all of them was influenced by Dr. York. If you look at Jay-Z, all of them were original members of Dr. York.
They were Nubians. Wow.
They were, but they weren't called Nubians at that time. Okay. That didn't exist at that time. Originally, they were known as Nubian Islamic Hebrews, also known as the Ansar Allah. Then from the Ansar Allah, you know Dr. York, he goes through these transitions. Originally, he was known as Imam Isa, also known as the Mahdi. And then from Imam Isa, he became known as Yahshua Rabboni. And then he created something called Right Knowledge. And he had these Right Knowledge scroll series, you know what I'm saying? And then as he developed on and on, they became known as Nubians, you know what I mean? And they had the Nubic language, which was a combination of Hebrew, Arabic, Swahili, just a bunch of languages that Dr. York fused and created this Nubic sound. Right there, he's known as the White York right there, also known as the Love Doctor.
That's when he was making music, right? He was a musician, right? Didn't he have a group and stuff?
Yes, he was a musician, and he even had ties with a Philadelphia, Pennsylvania group known as Blue Magic. So he was heavily influenced. You got to remember, Dr. York came in the late 1960s. He came in the 1960s, you know what I mean? And he was going through metamorphosis until you get to what you get to today. But yes, he definitely was major in the music world, and he had major ties in the music world, and he financed many artists that you even see to this day. So quiet as it's kept, if anybody wants to admit that or not, the Nubians, or what are now known as the Nubians, there was a heavy influence of their ideology within hip hop. That's just a fact. You can't get around that. So to say all that, and for this presentation, is just to let the world know that, you know, the truth and the myth beyond Afrika Bambaataa. The truth is, he was a major contributor to hip hop. He was a pioneer in hip hop, original pioneer in hip hop. There's no way we can get around that. And he influenced the world to see hip hop to where hip hop is at today. And if it wasn't for Afrika Bambaataa and the Zulu Nation, hip hop wouldn't be around the world as we see it today. And that's facts. And we have to give credit to where credit is due. But at the end of the day, he is, but the myth is that he's the founder of hip hop and the original godfather of hip hop. All that is a myth. That's all a myth. Hip hop was around before Afrika Bambaataa even came around with hip hop. And the oldest records that I can go to that I ran into was the southeast section of the Bronx, not the South Bronx, not the West Bronx, but the southeast section of the Bronx in a project known as Bronxdale, and a gang or organizational gang known as the Black Spades. I give all praise and honor to Yahweh, the supreme, intelligent, powerful one of our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, those striving for righteousness' sake. I say unto the family, Shalom Aleichem wa Todah Rabbah. Hallelujah. Thank you.
All right. Well, is that the end of the presentation?
That's the end. That's the
Does
end.
anybody have any questions? I'll give you guys a second to come up if you have any questions.
And I would like for us to end with the song from Afrika Bambaataa, Planet Rock. I want us to leave out with that song.
I don't know if I can play that. That's gonna make me get a copyright strike.
Oh, yeah,
I can't play a song, but shouts out to Afrika Bambaataa.
You can't play. And listen, let me say this. I gotta say this. We understand where he's been accused of. We understand that. But at the end of the day, like I told you and several others, he's still a major influencer of hip hop. There's no way that can be erased. Planet Rock, that song, you know, it influenced the world. There's no way of getting around that. And you know, it's sad that, you know, he went out like that. He went out like that. You know what I'm saying? And you know, I'm not gonna really like get into that because I wasn't there. But I will say that, you know, I take the stand of the victims because I heard their testimonies. And I must say, like, he definitely was out of order for what he did. You know what I mean?
But if you factor in that he was all up in like the influences that he was involved with, like he sounded like he, you know, that seemed like that was like going on in New York heavy. Like everything I'm hearing about New York, it was extremely wild up in New York, you know?
Yeah, it was, especially back. You got to remember that disco era. They even made a movie called, I think, Studio 54 or something like that. It was wild. You got to remember you had what's a lot of serial killers going on. What was that dude named? Sam, something Sam, son of Sam.
The son of Sam, yeah.
You had the blackout. You had all this. You know, you had a lot of slashers out there in New York. Even when you look at the movies back in the 80s, the 70s and 80s and all, a lot of them slasher killers and all them guys was coming out of New York.
Right.
So it was a lot of craziness going on at that time. But that's not to take away from Bambaataa being responsible and being a mentor to these young teenage boys. And, you know, and from what I heard, he used his power to do evil. He done some evil things. And we're not, and I want to make it clear to the listener, we're not here promoting or condoning Bambaataa. So let's just make that clear and get that out the way. You know what I mean? What he did was evil and it was wicked, and whatever came to him at the end, you know, they say he died of cancer. That could have been his judgment. You know what I'm saying? And that's that. But at the same time, this is why I called the presentation Afrika Bambaataa, the truth and the myth. So I just want to make it clear that I am not here promoting that man, but what I am promoting is hip hop. I was born into the world of hip hop, and I'm one that is into keeping the original records of hip hop alive as it pertains to it being a Black American culture that later became hijacked by other ethnic groups trying to claim it as their own. But what is now known today as hip hop, originally the sound was bebop, the musical sound, and the dance was hip hop. You know what I mean? Hopping from the hip or dancing from the hip. And that's it. Oh, and I want to give a shout out to Scoreboard Keepers. I want to give a shout out to DJ Disco King Marvel's daughter, Mina. I want to give a shout out to Young Blackjack, DJ Phase, you know, all the originals and pioneers of hip hop that made a way for us to have this culture that we have today. Those living and those that have made transition within the Azuletic world of existence and pure will, we will never ever forget what you've done for us. There's good, there was bad, there was ups, there was downs. These are learning experiences, and that we have to learn from and keep the momentum going, and not only just learn, but educate and dedicate the people not to make the same mistakes that some of us have made. And meaning, when I say some of us, meaning those that came, such as Bambaataa and others, and York and all these guys that came, their intent originally was good, but along the way, they lost their way and fell from the path. But at the end of the day, there's still foundation here that can be cleaned up and pushed forward and upward for righteousness' sake. Hallelujah. Shalom Aleichem.
All right. So I put the link in there. I mean, I'll give you like a countdown. If you're trying to get up here, let me know in the chat. If not, I'll go ahead and wrap this up. I had to ask one question. When you mentioned, I didn't really hear much of mention of Fab Five Freddy. Do you think that he was an influential aspect of hip hop?
Absolutely. There's no way that you can forget about Fab Five Freddy.
I didn't really see him in the presentation. I'm like, I think that Fab Five Freddy, I mean, he pretty much like helped put it on the map too, as far as media.
Yeah, that was what he was like, the journalist, the journalist of hip hop for our people. Give a shout out to Fab Five. I want to give a shout out to him, and I want to also give a shout out to my old head. His name is going to come up. Oh man, I know him personally. He's a major influence of hip hop too. Oh man. And
I want to give a shout out to Dee. Because people forget about the women that was covering hip hop, interviewing the artists. Yeah. Dee, Grandmaster Kaz. Yeah. What other journalists? Because it's like hip hop wouldn't be as much as it was when you didn't have the media coverage to really push it and promote and show people what was going on. So we got to give a shout out to those that covered it, that filmed it, Absolutely. That kept record of it, because Absolutely. You wouldn't have a movement without actual proof that the movement was even going on.
And quiet as it's kept, Grandmaster Cash, you know what I mean? He ghostwrite for a lot of MCs, you know what I mean? And just give a shout out to Grandmaster Cash.
Downtown Julie Brown, yes, Downtown Julie. Yeah. And we also got to give some shouts out, because we talked about East Coast and West Coast, but we also have to talk about those people that came from Europe, like Slick Rick, and I think the cowboy, what's his name is?
You got
Rapping Dude.
Yeah, Slick Rick, Moni Love, Dana Dane, all them cats that came from out of London. But again, remember that the show was strictly to bring it back to Black American influence. Even though they came from London, they still was influenced by the dominant sound. And I want to make that clear. This is strictly a Black American culture.
Because someone said that hip hop had nothing to do with Pan-Africanism, but I believe that the fact that it was able to bring people together in such a way that isn't that what Pan-Africanism is? Is that everybody kind of coming together from different cultures and being able to like agree on one thing, and that's hip hop. I believe that hip hop is probably one of the biggest Pan-African things because you have people all across that in some way is influenced by the music that was created called hip hop. You there? You there, Mighty Hebrew? I'm not saying it. What do you mean? Of all the things, of anything that brings people together, right? When you have people from different cultures coming together under a common thread, what else could be? That's probably the most thing that brings people together. The link is still in the chat, you guys. I'm gonna wait about another minute, and we'll probably wrap it up. I'm gonna see if he comes back. Hip hop is not Pan-African. Well, I'm just saying that if you understand what the tenets of being a Pan-African thing is, that means it's bringing people together from different places, coming together, making music. Right? You have people from the UK making hip hop. You have people from Africa making hip hop. Brazil making their own version of hip hop. You got it's global. Not just Pan-African, but just a global thing. It's gone beyond just the American shores. So yeah, good night. Okay. All right. So thank you guys so much. It was a great show. Much love, guys. Peace.
Just when I thought I couldn't find my way out, yeah, I searched the God in me to find my way out. I know it can seem way out, but the Creator flows to and through me from way out. I'm talking way out, yeah. See, if you believe in the God in you, it's a better place.